evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I think this was for Ramzi, but nevertheless, it caught your attention. So, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, a very warm welcome from me. I am Barbara Casadei. I am the head of NHLI, and I am really distinctly delighted to be introducing this event, which celebrates the professional and personal achievements of Professor Ramzi Khamis. So Ramzi is... I love you already. You are exactly the type of audience that one should have for an occasion like this. So, Professor Ramzi, can I call you Ramzi, right? I dropped the professor. Ramzi is a professor of cardiology at Imperial College, London, and he's also the Wu Family Endowed Chair in cardiology and cardiovascular medicine at the NHLI. He's also an honorary consultant cardiologist at the Hammersmith at the Imperial Trust, and in fact, he was the past head of service there. You know, it would build up this enormous amount of things that Ramzi manages to do successfully. So originally from Bezala in near Bethlehem, he moved to the United Kingdom as a teenager, attended high school and then university in Bristol, where he graduated in medicine. He then did his clinical training in the UK and obtained a PhD at the NHLI at Imperial College in 2014 under the supervision of Professor Dorian Ascott. Applause. I must say, I'm loving this. It's my lecture. Well, you know, we're doing well. Well, since then, his research focused on the mechanism, molecular imaging, and treatment of coronary atherosclerosis, and particularly on the vulnerable plaque. And that is the coronary plaque prone to rupture, that leading to myocardial infarction, which remains one of the main causes of death and disability around the world. So he has been an early promoter of the idea that is now well established that inflammation and an immune reaction are part and parcel of both the atherosclerosis and the plaque rupture. He has also been one of the first to identify antibodies and nanoparticles that can be used both to image the plaque as well as to deliver treatment to the plaque. So for this work, he has been awarded many accolades, and he certainly has a very large international reputation that one can witness, as I have done last autumn, when at the Vulnerable Plaque meeting, that this group of people that meets every year to progress the science in this topic. So in parallel with his research and his deep commitment to this clinical activity, he has also devoted a considerable energy to building cardiovascular capacity and educational opportunity in his beloved Palestine. Thank you. So Professor Khamis really approaches all he does, from the care of his patients to the training of his research students, his humanitarian activity in harrowing circumstances, with great empathy, a bit of cunning, yeah, and boundless energy. So having a colleague like Ramzi, for sure, puts everything and our everyday worries of our academic life into perspective. And you know, it also helps us focus on what needs to be done to actually make a difference for the better. And here I like to quote Anne Frank, who said, "Isn't it wonderful that nobody needs to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world?" So Professor Khamis, Ramzi, doesn't really wait, yeah? And I actually think that every department should have a Ramzi, yeah? They're keeping us safe. So it is my really great pleasure now to invite Ramzi to deliver his inaugural lecture.
I love you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I have a confession. I've got a teacher crush on Barbara. And every day it gets worse. I don't know what to do. Does that get me sacked from Imperial? I hope not. Anyway, so there we go. Now that everyone can relax a little bit, we can have a little bit of fun this afternoon. None of this is serious, but first of all, before I start talking about giving my speech or my talk, I want to just thank you all for being here. I mean, I'm seeing my life in front of me. I've got, my family, my children, my friends from university, my amazing colleagues from Imperial NHS Trust and from NHLI, the donors who support our research, and I'm proud to be the Wu Professor of Cardiology. The Wu family are here and other donors. But actually, most importantly, I've got people I grew up with, so people came from United States, from Palestine, from Jordan, from Sweden, from Ireland, and really from all over the place. So I'm so proud and so honored to have you here, and I can't thank you enough. Most of all, Professor Richard Sutton, who appointed me as a cardiologist in 2006, came from Monaco today with his wife. So thank you, Richard, for doing that. It's a really important thing. So we have, I'll talk about Bethlehem a lot more in the talk and introduce the team, but really just two things also before I start, because we've got people online from all over the world. I'd like to thank everyone online for being online and listening to what I'm about to say. But in particular, I'd like to mention my parents who are in Bethlehem, in Beit Jala, sitting with my sister Maha there, listening to us. So big hello to my parents. And also the team in our charity hospital in Bethlehem at Gaza, they're all sitting there watching, so big hello to the team there. And another hello, the last one, to the team in Darfur with Karim. Karim is sitting in Darfur watching this with the Solidarity team. So just big hello to the team in Darfur who are in different circumstances. Yeah, thank you. So Gibran said, "A little knowledge that acts is worth infinitely more than much knowledge that is idle." I use that excuse all my life not to learn too much and to just learn enough to act on it. And it's really important to have quotes like this to get you out of trouble when your boss is Dorian Haskard and wants to know everything in the world. And so Gibran told me not to expand more than what I need to know. And I'm going to define vulnerability. And really, vulnerability it's something that I've learned about in the past 10 years. And it's actually an important concept. It's a concept that you could be exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally, in a conventional manner. But in a medical manner, it's conditions that are determined by physical, social, economic, or environmental factors that puts you at risk of having an event. And so I'm going to talk about plaque vulnerability, which is atherosclerotic plaque that can rupture and cause a heart attack, patient vulnerability in high-risk patients, vulnerable society, and vulnerable civilization. Before we start anything, I was taught to frame the foundational questions of anything that we're approaching. And really the foundational questions of my talk today is how can we more precisely identify and mitigate cardiovascular risks in patients? What integrated scientific, clinical, and societal systems are needed to build resilience and to protect society from vulnerability? And importantly, how can we meaningfully narrow the global inequalities in health education opportunity, especially in communities shaped by complex displacements or structural disadvantage? This is my family in Palestine. So these are my parents in 1952 in their engagement party, and them about 10 years ago on the right, and my wonderful sisters. I'm the young boy there holding Summer's hand there. They've looked after me all their life, and I'm so grateful to them all, and they're just wonderful. This is our house where we grew up, and it really is the house in which 2 candles were burnt to light up the world and fill our lives with happiness and joy. So another poem by Gibran, but this time it's a little bit rings true to me, really. So I was born in Jerusalem, grew up in Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and I grew up in really in the Collège des Frères, which is our school, our beloved school, until the age of 15, where the brothers looked after us really well, and it really laid the foundation for a life of duty, really. And they managed to protect most of us. Unfortunately, we've lost friends during the first Intifada, killed, and that was one of the triggers that made me come to England. But Jerusalem is a wonderful place. It's just a melting pot of civilization. You learn so much just by being in the old city. I kind of pretty much lived in the old city as a pupil of Collège des Frères, and I know every little nook and cranny there, and I miss it very much. And as Nizar Qabbani said, tomorrow the lemon trees will blossom and the olive trees will rejoice, hopefully. This is my dad. So my dad was in the medical services in the Jordanian army and did some of his training in the UK, hence I'm here. But actually, he's a wonderful man, and unfortunately lost all the wars he fought against the Israelis as a thing, and he's still probably losing now. But I mean, so he's a veteran, and he told me at the age of 6 to rise up to the level of my duty, to the shock and horror of my mother and my sisters, and that still rings true in my ears. And then at the age of 13 said, your worth is not measured by what you do, but what you say, by what you say or believe, but what you do for others. And I still think that still rings true. But the most important comment is by my mother, who every day till now, till this morning, said, well done, you have made us proud. So this is kind of really who I am and where I come from. So shipped off to boarding school, the most amazing place, Clifton College. And I've got some colleagues and friends from Clifton here. Ryan, who I shared the room with at Clifton, is here. He knows more about me than I'd like him to know. And in the words of Sir Henry Newbolt, we've lost all delight of her, we keep her honor yet. And I do that on a daily basis. I'm very fond of my old school. And of Bristol, where I went to university, so one of the best universities in the world. I mean, I can't say that being an Imperial professor, that it's better than Imperial. But Professor Suleiman, who's here, who was my first professor, taught me in the first year. He's just over here. I'm honored that you're here, sir. He will tell you that it's the best university, and I will possibly agree. But Bristol shaped my academic life, and I went out with a collection of friends and colleagues that are still wonderful, and some of them are here as well. So thank you as well for coming. Traveled the country a little bit, did emergency medicine, messed around with Dan in Leeds doing A&E for 6 months, and then taught physiology for a year in Bristol with Sadi back in the unit there. And then I did the Baths and the London medical rotation, and that was amazing. So St. Bartholomew's Hospital is the oldest hospital in the UK, probably in the world as a formal hospital, if you want to think about formal hospital structures. And there was so much shared between where I grew up and Bart's, because these are the Hogarth paintings. And even the church at Bart's is a Crusader church. And these paintings depict the Pool of Bethesda and the Good Samaritan. And I actually know these physical places in Palestine. So it really connected with me, and I really enjoyed my time there. And from there, I was awarded, I think, one of the first academic clinical fellowships in the UK in cardiology. And Professor Jamil Mayat is sitting there, and Nick Peters, who were key in appointing me to that. And I think Nick asked me, what do you want to do in 10 years? I said, I'm going to be sitting where you're sitting, interviewing the next fellows. So thank you, Nick, for that. And so really, that's my start at Imperial, and I'm going to come back to that. But I'm going to tell you about coronary heart disease. So coronary heart disease is a huge problem, and still a huge problem despite everything that we try, and despite optimal medical therapy. Still 70,000 deaths in the UK each year, average of death of 8 minutes, just massive. Responsible for 9 million deaths in the world each year. And the main burden is from heart attacks, where coronary heart disease happens when there's deposits, atherosclerosis deposits on the arteries. And these deposits either cause significant narrowings and the patients get angina and chest pain, or the deposits rupture and they cause a heart attack. And that's what we're trying to look at here. I'm going to tell you about oxidized LDL and atherosclerosis. So LDL is the cholesterol, what in lay terms known as bad cholesterol. It's actually not bad until it's modified, because it doesn't become antigenic until it undergoes some modification. So the LDL molecule is like a chocolate wrapper. It's like a piece of chocolate wrapped by a wrapper. So the piece of chocolate in the middle is the lipid core, and it's wrapped by a protein called the apolipoprotein B, and any modification to that protein renders it antigenic, and then it becomes an antigen that gets taken up by the immune cells and then deposited in arteries, due to what Dorian has taught me over the years is a problem with homeostasis. It's an autoimmune problem. And so, we basically, rather than just study it, we decided to actually take advantage of the knowledge of the biology and actually really tackle it from different aspects. So I'm going to tell you about antibodies against oxidized LDL, and these antibodies we found that they're actually good, they're beneficial. They clear up this oxidized LDL and they take it away into the reticular endothelial system and make it less available to go into arteries. But also we've developed our own antibodies to identify this antigenic structure and actually target it like a magic bullet and find out where it is and hopefully deliver therapies there. And furthermore, I'm going to tell you about therapeutics that we're doing with this. So this is the vulnerable plaque. I mean, the term vulnerable plaque is amazing. It describes exactly what it is. And this is a slide from Rino Vermani's lab that we collaborate with in Maryland, where you can see that this plaque just ruptures and causes an injury at that site, and then a clot forms, and then the clot blocks the artery, and then a heart attack happens because the myocardium is deprived of oxygen. And there's different ways, morphological ways of looking at that vulnerable plaque using intravascular ultrasound, laser, optical coherent tomography, and near-infrared spectroscopy, but none of them look at the biology. None of these actually look at the biological activity of the plaque. So this is a rupturing volcano that I would say would be similar to a plaque that's rupturing, and a nuclear weapon that's exploding. So to predict whether a volcano is going to rupture, you can look at the structure of a volcano, look at the thickness of the cover, where the lava sits behind, all of that. But really, to find out whether it's going to rupture, you need to know the activity of the lava. So we still haven't got that, and that's what my research is focused on. Same with nuclear reactors, but this is kind of a little bit funnier, where if you really want to know whether a nuclear weapon is going to go off, you need to have the temperature of the person pressing the button, not the thing. And so the ruptured plaque is very similar to this. So really, from the vulnerable plaque to the vulnerable patient, our aim in our group is to do robust cardiovascular risk stratification in the primary prevention study population. We've developed blood tests to do that, and I'm going to talk you through that. For us as interventional cardiologists to have better tools to mitigate future risk, and we've developed the molecular imaging to hopefully do that. And then scientifically linking the immune system to atherosclerosis in patients and develop therapeutics. So my journey in this science started with my PhD fellowship from the Wellcome Trust, and I can't be more grateful to the Wellcome for giving me that first opportunity. Dorian supervised me, and Professor Paul Matthews and Professor Wilkins headed up the program, and that was really my first opportunity to do some serious research. but also quite a lot of fun. So this is the Hascard lab circa 2010. And you can see Kathleen there looking like she's not had a drink, with Dorian, who definitely has not had a drink. And I think that's us in Los Angeles. And these are 3 generations of the Hascard lab. So Professor Hascard, Dr. Iqbal Malik, Professor Billy Iqbal, who's now in Vancouver, and myself, and Dorian asking us to keep calm. As part of my PhD, I was very fortunate and lucky to win the Binks Travel Award from the British Atherosclerosis Society, and I spent quite a lot of my PhD traveling between Boston and Imperial, and I established a great link with Harvard that still lives 13 years later. We're still working very closely together. This is the Jaffer lab at Harvard, and I did quite a lot of my intravascular imaging there, and we're still collaborating on many projects and publishing together, which is great. So I'm going to start with the imaging and the identification. As Barbara said, we've got these antibodies that can home into the plaque. And one of them is called LO1, and that started in Dorian's lab, and then we've humanized it. We made it into a fragment that doesn't have biological activity. And we've now done other things to it, like put nanoparticles on it to image. And this is what it looks like in imaging. I mean, these are experimental animals that have atherosclerosis. And you can see on the left here, calcified atherosclerosis near the heart. I don't have a pointer, so it's difficult to show you. But on the right, you can quite clearly see our antibody lighting up where the plaque is. And we've done some very neat experiments here looking underneath the endothelial layer. And you can see as you peel off the endothelial layer, our antibodies targeting the dangerous plaque just light up just underneath, and you can see where they are. And that kind of the beginning kind of exposed us, and we had quite a lot of media coverage. I think the most fun interview was with the naked scientists who are on the top left. I don't know why they're naked scientists, but they're really good. Anyway, so I thought that was quite fun. And then we've got another antibody that targets less heavily oxidized cholesterol, which is actually really interesting. So the cholesterol molecule, the LDL, as it adheres underneath the endothelium, it opens up a little bit like a flower, and it shows this part of it that's hidden. It's called the hidden epitope, and we've got an antibody that finds that hidden epitope very early on. And so if you image with both antibodies, you can find the early atherosclerosis and the delayed atherosclerosis, and that's kind of the, unlocking the secrets of the cholesterol and how it really interacts. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bethlehem and the Bethlehem Arab Society for Rehabilitation. So it's an amazing place. Lots of you have been there with me, and thank you for coming. I dragged Dorian there, and then he's now addicted. And lots of you have come, and thank you for supporting this place. But really, I wasn't involved in anything like that. I was doing science, doing some teaching, and then New Year's Eve 2014, I was buying flowers for my mother-in-law for New Year's Eve, and the head of this hospital stopped me and started shouting at me, basically saying, "What are you doing all of this science for?" And there's, we're in a place where there's walls separating us from the heart attack centers, and every day people are dying. I actually couldn't sleep that night. 7 a.m. the next morning, I was writing the grant to open this center. And so we started 2018. We've over there, with the help of lots of colleagues and friends from all over the world, some Israeli colleagues who were amazing and helped us a lot. People from the UK, from all over the world came and helped. And my team from Imperial came and operated there several times. Jamil was there as well. And really, the professors from the NHLI and the head of the NHLI came when we first opened it, and that was a big boost for us. And we've got an amazing team there that is so multicultural. You've got a nun on the right, hijabis, and everyone from all over the world working together as one team. And this place has now served nearly 11,000 patients. I couldn't believe that. So kudos to the Bazar team who are online, and to the team that have now actually started doing research. Dr. Raed Aqil is leading on some research there as well. So it's growing. We've got a big MDT every Tuesday evening, which is the first in Palestine. 20 people around the table discussing cases. And 1,500 primary angioplasty that would have died otherwise. So I'm grateful and blessed to have been involved with this. This is the man who got me involved on the right, and that's his son who's now leading the center. And if you want to know more, just email this email. So COVID happened, and these are my amazing family. So my wife, Manal, my kids, Yusuf and Mira, during COVID. They didn't see me very much during COVID. We were all kind of pretty much locked up. And here my boss on the NHS side is looking at me, Amrish, saying, yes, you were locked up, but I don't blame you for it. We all were locked up doing, all sorts of things. And actually, but we did take a break to get a donation from Banksy, who gave us to Bazaar these 3 lovely paintings that were auctioned in Sotheby's for 1.8 million to build a highly acute stroke unit. And ABCD, which is the charity that ran this, we're very grateful for them, and the unit is being built. So this is what the unit looks like now, and due to the current situation, we've now repurposed it into a trauma and neurosurgery as well as intensive care. And I can't thank everyone here enough for supporting that. Rami's in the corner, and he's contributed a lot to that, as well as Fadi and others. So thank you for your help with that. So this is Imperial NHS team, and I don't know how to describe them. They're more than family, I think. Sorry to my family, but I think my team, I think in a way they're closer to me than family, because we can't afford to not love each other. Patients die, and we work with love, really profound love for each other. We've got 3 generations here, Professor Jasper Kuna, Iqbal Malik, myself, Dan Keane balancing a bottle of alcohol on his, cleaning alcohol in his head after a long day operating. So we have a lot of fun. Dr. Amajid Sethi, my partner, on a Friday. Adam, who was my PhD student, who was doing an experiment on the right and operating with me as a consultant on the left. And the amazing Rasha Lami, who's here. I don't know where Rasha is, she's somewhere here. There we go. Who is just a phenomenal, phenomenal person, leader in science and medicine, and I'm proud to be a friend and a colleague of hers, and proud that she's here tonight. And then the research team, and you've got there Sarah operating. She's doing her PhD with me and learning how to operate and doing well, and Lisa and Tanya and Gada, who actually, I was her registrar 25 years ago, and now we're colleagues. So, I thought I should just take a pause here because everyone is tired of heavy stuff, and just thank the British Heart Foundation. Without the British Heart Foundation, none of my work would have been, or our work, or any of our work at the NHLI would have been possible. It's an unbelievable organization that just does the best research in the world for the lowest amount of cost. And if you're going to support any organization, please support the BHF. It's much more important than any other organization in the world. It really is. The discoveries via the BHF has saved millions of lives. So, coming on to identifying the vulnerable patient, we've done quite a lot of studies on high-sensitivity CRP, and I wanted to just talk about 2 studies that are key. One of them, with Jamil, we showed that if you come into the hospital with chest pain and your inflammation marker, your CRP, is only a little bit raised, you're much more likely to die within 3 years. And so that kind of not just gives us an idea to use this as a biomarker, but to study why that is. So it's hypothesis-generating finding. We can use it as a biomarker, but also we need to figure out why that is. And we just validated that and just published it in another study, which is the Anglo-Scandinavian Cardiac Outcomes Study, showing that one measurement of CRP can predict your mortality and your cardiovascular events 20 years later. So inflammation is super important, and we're paying a lot of attention to that. And so, these are the headlines from that paper, and hopefully we can implement that in our pathways. But we also developed our own blood tests. So we've developed blood tests to measure the amount of these protective antibodies in blood to see who has them and who doesn't, and what do they mean. And so this is looking at total serum IgG, and we showed in the first study that we did that if you've got more IgG, which is the immunoglobulin that basically helps with clearing up debris, then you're much more protected from having a heart attack in the Ascot study. And then we validated in the nodal cohort that other antibodies are even more protective. So immunoglobulin M, IgM, against specific oxidized LDL is super protective. So you get a huge reduction in risk, 71% reduction in risk if you have higher levels of that. than if you didn't. And then we did another validation study to see why. So we did, within the IBIS study, which we did with Dutch colleagues, we showed that if you have these antibodies, you're much less likely to have the vulnerable plaque I told you about than not. And so it's kind of all coming together that these antibodies are protective. And so really from these studies, we've concluded that high levels of IgM against oxidized LDL are protective. And this is for the first time linking IgM antibody levels in humans to objective risk of plaque rupture. Adam took it one step further in the latest paper that he's just published when he was my PhD student. Now he's an independent senior lecturer. I'm very proud of Adam. He's just in the corner there. He's very humble, but he works super hard. He's probably the 5th generation of the Hascard lab. And Adam showed that with our Scottish colleagues, that if you have these antibodies, your IgG antioxidized LDL antibodies this time, that you're much less likely to have this vulnerable plaque, even on CT scanning, even from CT scanning. And he basically then did quite a lot of work in our basic lab, and this is really cool work. So we've humanized the LO1 antibody, we've made it into a fragment that you can inject, and we've, with our Irish colleagues from Queen's University in Belfast, we've made these nanoparticles from PGLA that is basically plastic, and you put these antibodies on these plastic nanoparticles and you inject it, and it goes to where the dangerous plaque is. Look at that. So this is the control experiment, which doesn't have any light, and the positive experiment where the plaque is just lighting up with this nanoparticle. And this is pending publication, but Adam presented it at the European Society, I think, Adam, was it? Yeah, and he had the headline in the Telegraph, which I thought is a cool headline, your headline in the Telegraph, which is Tiny Tech to Tackle Heart Attacks. This is Cinzia. Cinzia is Italian. She did her PhD with me as well. And she used these antibodies for PET scanning, and we're developing that. Now, I'm going to come to something more fun and a little bit painful, and I don't know how to approach it, so I'm going to approach it with humor. So COVID happened. Out of nowhere, COVID happened. And Jamil called me, and he said, Ramzi, you've got to help with this. You're stepping up as co-head of cardiology, looking after the inpatient pathways, and I'm going to be clinical director, and Amanda, who I think might join, was the co-head for outpatient services. And then we just became Dad's army of COVID. That's me on the left on a kind of day-to-day basis. You know, we couldn't breathe, we couldn't eat. It was really quite alarming to patients. But what we did is we redesigned everything that we did. We redesigned the whole operation. We took the hospital apart and rebuilt it to be able to treat COVID patients, but also normal patients that needed cardiac operations. And then we found a worrying signal. So we found from the British Heart Foundation that actually patients stopped coming to hospital. You know, and Barbara was heavily involved with that, and she was on this campaign with me. We didn't know each other, but we were on the same campaign. So Professor Sir Nilesh Samani asked me, said, Ramzi, you've got to take this on. And I was on the radio and on the TV pretty much for 2 weeks every day saying, come to hospital, we're here for you. And at the same time, some of the government was saying, don't go to hospital, you're overwhelming the NHS. And so that was fun. But my quote on the BBC several times is that we're just worried and anxious about the patients that we're not seeing, and we're there for you. You know, the message that we're there for you, just come, we're there for you if you have chest pain. And so it didn't really work. People were still scared, so we thought, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to educate the physicians. So we started this thing, and Adam helped with it, Jamil was co-leading, and also Amanda, who's not here. We did this thing in April, just after COVID started. 19,000 physicians joined online. I've never had attendance like that, even today. But 19,000 physicians joined online to learn what Imperial are doing in treating patients with COVID and without COVID and changing anything. We've never worked so well together as a team. So we had a command and control group, and I said, okay, Ricardo, you're doing PPE. Nick, who's now head of service, okay, you're redesigning architecture because he's an engineer of some sort, whatever. So everyone took on something, and we worked with the trust, and Claire, who's in the corner there, knows all about this. She was our chief operating officer at the time. Thank you for coming, Claire. And it was really interesting because we managed to change how people were treating COVID across the UK. And the Millbrook, who I thank for running this for free for us, they hosted it on their thing, actually got an award for hosting it as Lockdown Heroes. And so that's kind of our COVID. And in the middle of that, I started the cardioimmune clinic because I wanted to link immunology to atherosclerosis and cardiology. And I announced that in 2017 at the EuroPCR meeting. But then afterwards, it became more about kind of, you need to have an MDT. You can't treat patients alone. And I think Taryn is in the audience there. She's the very good-looking one on the left in comparison to Mark, who's not very good-looking on the right. But Taryn is a world leader in cardioimmunology, and we're kind of lucky to have the best team. Andrew did his PhD with us, with Professor Justin Mason, and he's now a consultant like Adam with us. Amanda, inherited cardiac conditions. Deepa, who's the imager, and Mark, who's about to be consultant, hopefully with us as well. And we've got, I think, probably one of the best MDTs to tackle cardioimmune patients who are super complex. And we love it, right? I mean, we do love it. And thank you for being here, team. Really appreciate you. COVID in Palestine, I kind of had to do something. So we kind of started thinking about running out of oxygen. And I thank people who gave money to buy oxygen tanks. That was very helpful. We managed to get ventilators. But most importantly, I felt that we should get the vaccine early on. And I contacted AstraZeneca, and I was told by the president and the Minister of Health in Palestine to go ahead with that. And we were able to deliver 80,000 vaccines to the frontline staff very early on. One of the first countries in the Middle East, I think, Hussam, we were to deliver the vaccine. And this is the Minister of Health at the time, May Cayley, hosting me once we've delivered the vaccine to them in the middle of COVID. Proud moment, really, for me to have been involved with that, and I'm really grateful that I was given that opportunity. And it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't at Imperial. No one would have listened to me if I wasn't at Imperial. So thank you for empowering me at Imperial. So this is fun. Barbara loves this meeting, so does Dorian. This is a whole bunch of, I think, geeks. Can I say geeks? We're all really geeky people that meet once a year and talk about vulnerability. But what's really interesting is that we have 3 days going from basic to translational science to imaging to therapeutics. And it's a full day every day, it doesn't stop. And it's 7-minute talks, and you just carry on and on and on and on. And at the end of it, you have 100 grants to write and loads of collaborations and best people in the world to work with. So we're blessed to have this meeting. And I kind of stole it to Imperial 5 years ago and called it the Imperial Vulnerable Plaque and Patient Meeting. But the real people here who are behind it are Professor Patrick Serois. And there on the left, and I'm sorry, Jim just lost his wife, and condolences to him. But this is Dr. Jim Muller. Jim is very interesting because Jim won the Nobel Prize, but not for medicine. He won the Nobel Prize for peace. The reason he won the Nobel Prize for peace is because of vulnerability, because he worked on nuclear disarmament in the 1980s. And so it's such an honor to work with people like that. It's just unbelievable. You sit in a room and you talk to them about vulnerability, and they really understand vulnerability. This is a Nobel Prize winner in nuclear disarmament. So the parallels, and then you reach a position, you reach a level in science where you don't need to talk about the intricacies of science, you talk about concepts. And Dorian taught me that over the years, and this is kind of a big example of that. But now to lighten the mood a little bit, I should have listened to my mother-in-law before I started my research or before ending it, because she's a yogi. She's an amazing person. She's super fit at her age, and she does a lot of yoga. And she's told me for years and years and years, Ramzi, yoga is good for the heart. So we actually now know that that's true, because actually the nervous system is connected to your immune system in such a direct way, and there's now been several studies showing that. And in that spirit, the joie de vivre, the music, exercise, yoga are actually all immunosuppressants, they are immunomodulators. And this is Professor Patrick Serois practicing what we preach at the Vulnerable Plaque meeting. So there we go. We're not, and so that's the evenings at the VPM, and they're very joyful. So also in that vein, this is Tanya. Tanya is here. She's my joint PhD student with Sweden. I don't know where Tanya is. She's up there somewhere. And Tanya is wonderful. She's Swedish, and she's doing a PhD with me and Professor David Erlinger at Malmö. And we've just done this amazing study that she just submitted for publication yesterday, I think. And what we've shown from the WAHA study, which is randomizing people to having some walnuts every day versus no walnuts, is that your immune constituents, your IgG, which we showed in the Anglo-Scandinavian cardiac outcomes trial is protective, is increased by 6% by just some walnuts. So that's something, right? So you just have to have some walnuts, and you know, you're 6% better off. We don't know whether this is beneficial. That's going to be an outcome study, but at least we know that there's a biological effect. Now coming to this lot. So Jamil, as I said, you know, you've got to be co-head of cardiology. And a few months later, I had to step up to being clinical director. And the directorate, I've never done anything like that. 70 million pounds a year, and I know nothing about money. And Amrish, who was my divisional director, is looking at me, yes, Ramzi, you know nothing about money. He's agreeing with me. And you know, hundreds of staff, lots of problems, academic activity to be supportive, high volume emergency, stuff going wrong, people dying, disciplinary action, people doing stupid things, people doing good things. You have to congratulate them all. I've learned so much in my 5-year journey. We've appointed 10 or 12 consultants. We've opened a new cath lab, 6 cath lab. We're kind of really doing well. And I thank Amrish for his leadership in that. And he's just very, very well. Now, when Jamil handed over to me, he said, Ramzi, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. And when I've just handed over to Amanda, it's the best thing I've done in my life. So I'm very pleased. We've got Chris, who's still there. Oh, Amanda is there. Thank you, Amanda. And Chris is here, he's general manager, and Roberto is head of surgery, who does a fantastic job. And thank you, Amanda, for carrying the weight now, and you're doing an amazing job, and I thank you for it. So this is Reza. Reza is in the audience. Where's Reza? Reza is here somewhere. I can't see him. Oh, he's up there. Reza is understated, very humble, but he invented a new technique in MRI to look at vulnerable plaque in MRI, and there's more to come. We've published this paper recently to show that with Reza's technique, he did his PhD with me and Professor Rena Botnar at Tommy's, and he did really well with that. And we've got this new technique with MRI with that radiation that can show plaque rupture. So that's coming. Nasser is in Saudi. He's watching us online. Hello, Nasser. He's now associate professor in Saudi, and he did his PhD with me. And Nasser presented this work as a late-breaking trial at the American College of Cardiology last year. And it was a really, really nice study. What Nasser showed is that in patient vulnerability, once the patient has had a heart attack, if you monitor them at home for 6 months, we've got some advanced monitoring that's easy to use, you reduce hospital admissions massively. I mean, the hazard ratio was 0.24 for non-scientists. That's like a 76% reduction in hospital readmissions, which is massive. And so we calculated, if we roll this out in the NHS, we calculated hundreds of millions of pounds of savings. And Amrish and I talked about this, but it's difficult in the current environment, but hopefully we'll come to rolling it out in due course. And obviously it was a late-breaking trial and a great paper, and it drove us to do more work. So Badr, who's in the audience now, who's my PhD student, and he's doing a really nice study, and I think he's getting a bit kind of tired with it, but it's really hard to do because we're doing transcatheter aortic valve implantation on patients and actually doing really intense remote monitoring, sending them home on the same day rather than keeping them in hospital. And we're looking at whether we can reduce readmissions and actually have better outcomes. And we've got this amazing AI monitor that we use, that we put on the patient for 3 days, that tells you and alarms if there's a problem. And then Badr has to call me in the middle of the night and say one of our research patients has alarmed, and then we bring them in at that time. But otherwise, now nearly 80 patients, we're doing well with that recruitment. So this is painful, but we can't ignore it. You can't turn a blind eye. How can you turn a blind eye? So Gaza has been pulverized, and war is war, but this is intense. I mean, it's very, very difficult for the whole world, for us as Palestinians, but the whole world. And the Bazar motto is that every patient is foremost a human being. And so you can't just operate on people and let them go. You've got to help. And the rehabilitation is so important. UNRWA says there's 4,000 children that are amputees. That's a massive underestimation. We know that we've got about 30,000 amputees in total. We know that when Hussam and I met President Abbas a few weeks ago, he told us we've lost 200,000 people in Gaza. And he told us that we've lost around 400,000 homes. So it's a big problem, and we can only do one patient at a time, and that's what we're going to do, because we can't do much more than that. So, sorry, this patient used a drainage pipe as a prosthetic. So the community-based rehabilitation model at Basra that we have in Bethlehem and across the West Bank allows for teams to go to patients, install prosthetics, and then rehabilitate them. We're now going to do this in Gaza. So we've just appointed 4 people in Gaza. This is me and the medical director at Bazar, Nizar. Hello, Nizar, if you're watching. And down there, Mahran, who has the CBR program, Eli, and the team. We've now got 3D printers that print prosthetics, and we've installed them in the West Bank, and we're now working with other organizations to get those to Gaza. And we've already employed 4 people in Gaza to be the first CBR team, and we hope that we can expand that. We've got a consortium of NGOs that are working together now, about 6 different organizations, and hopefully we'll be working together to make this happen, and obviously we'll try our best. Sarah, top left corner, where's Sarah? She's always hiding. There we go, Sarah. So Sarah is doing a really nice PhD project. Sarah is wonderful. She's bubbly and wonderful and so positive. If you're ever feeling depressed, you just need to say good morning to her, and then you stop being depressed. And Sarah is doing a really interesting project with us. So her PhD with myself and Manuel Meyer, I don't know if Manuel is here, but myself and Manuel are co-supervising Sarah to look at the off-target effects of novel therapeutics. So everyone is on Mounjaro and Ozempic, and there's now a lot of evidence that it's good for the heart. We're trying to figure out why. And Sarah literally just a few weeks ago found out that it reduces your apolipoprotein B significantly by about 20%. So it could be the statin effect. On the other hand, she's also finding some effects on statins in the BIS-3 trial that it actually increases lipoprotein A, which is another antigenic molecule. So, but the overall risk reduction is definitely good with statins. But it's really interesting to look at these off-target effects. Now, coming to Bethlehem University. So we've got the Vice Chancellor of Bethlehem University sitting here. Thank you, Brother Hernan, for coming. And the 2 Vice Presidents as well, Brother Jack and also Dr. Fadi. Thank you for coming all the way from Bethlehem. It means the world to me. And there's a link with Imperial because, as JB knows, so John Bosco sits on the Board of Regents of Bethlehem University, and I sit on the Board of Regents with John Bosco, and we work closely together on helping the university. And there is something about Bethlehem University that is super special. 80% Muslim, 20% Christian, 75% women. You're educating women in the Middle East. It's just phenomenal. It's so special and just amazing. This is, I could say my best friend's dad. He's just there in the corner, Maxim's dad, Dr. Anton Sansor, who was key to establishing the university and kind of took it into the stratosphere. And there's a link with Imperial here because, unfortunately, Dr. Sansor passed away at a very young age in his 50s of acute myocardial infarction. And being Maxim's best friend, we had to go through that together, and we miss him a lot. But in his memory, we have the Sansor Fund that Amanda knows all about, because every month, someone in our directorate gets a prize for excellence and a prize for kindness from the Sansor Fund. So there is a link with Imperial, and thank you for doing that, Maxime and Jackie. So vulnerable civilization. So you do all of this stuff, but what else can you do? So you can't, you know, there is a destruction of civilization in Palestine, unfortunately, you know, due to the war, and you've got to empower people to speak up. You've got to empower people to encourage the civilization to revive, and you've got to work really hard on that. There's no one better than Bethlehem University that can do that with the ethos of Bethlehem University. And thank you, Bethlehem University, for doing that. So the latest project, and I'm proud to have kind of been part of establishing the project, which is the Shireen Abu Akleh School of Journalism and Media. Shireen was from Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and she was killed in a line of duty, unfortunately. And in her honor, we will be establishing a cutting-edge school of journalism and media with the help of many friends here, and some of my friends from university introduced me to the people that are leading on it. So thank you, Alice, for doing that. And you know, we've got really top people that will help us on this. We have John Riley, who headed up Sky News. We have professors of media and journalism, and we're really, really excited about building the School of Journalism, because the force of culture will always win over the culture of force. So if you'd like to learn more about this, this is the website to use. I met Pope Francis not as part of my work with Bethlehem University beforehand, but really inspiring man, and really just meeting him for 10 minutes gives you enough wind in your sails to carry on working. But the privilege of being a physician is truly a privilege. You don't take things for granted. You know, it's not something you should or can take for granted. So, you know, you meet people, you do public engagement here with children. My team, the amazing bosses I have. So Barbara and Anna, who's just stepped down as head of vascular sciences, my research team, and just even meeting, you know, people in the public sphere, it is actually a privilege, and I don't take it for granted, not even for 1 second. I'm now going to come to the panacea of my talk, because we're nearly there. And this is about therapeutics. So Lisa, who's my PhD student, Lisa has 2 master's degrees, and in her second year of PhD, and she's only 23, so she's underperforming maybe. Yeah, so and Lisa is now looking at injecting our humanized antibody into to provide protection, because we know that these antibodies are protective. So we're working on the immunizations. So coming back to the foundational questions, I hope I tried to answer some of them. I'm not going to read them again, but you know, vulnerable plaque, vulnerable patient, vulnerable society, vulnerable civilization. And this wouldn't be possible without the amazing research team that I have. Look at this. We have more flags in the research team than we have people. The most multicultural team in the world, although I am being criticized at the moment because 80% of my team are women. So I need to employ more men, so I have to, yeah. And this is really cool, you know, to be featured as a team in the BBC Science Focus as one of the discoveries bringing an end to the UK's, because that's really cool. That feels good, and you know, I'm very grateful for that. I don't know where to start thanking people. I mean, you thank the team, you thank the people you work with, you thank everyone on the slide, and our funders, so the Wu family who are sitting here, thank you. The British Heart Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, the BRC, NIHR, Safwan Subhan, Ashley Tabor King, the Sansor Fund I mentioned, and all of these wonderful people I worked with. Just unbelievable. I can't stop thanking you all, and I owe you all a lot. But I want to leave you with one slide, which I've learned over the past 25 years is the most important thing. You've got to work with joy, because the last Gibran quote in my lecture is that work is love made visible. And I leave you with an image from Palestinian artist Sliman Mansour showing exactly this, the orange picking in Jaffa, working with joy. So. Thank you. Thank you. Please, gosh, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's all yours.
We're going to do the question. Oops. Sorry.
Well, what can one say? I woke up this morning and I said, oh goodness. I woke up this morning and I said to myself, great, it's Ramzi's inaugural today. It's going to be fantastic. Little did I know how fantastic it has turned out to be. What a great lecture, Ramzi. Once again. Yeah. Well, I can't help reminiscing to, I think it was March 2009, when Ramzi emailed me, and I went to meet him and a group of other people, I think at St. Mary's, and it was a damp afternoon, a bit like we've had this week. And Ramzi had been awarded his Welcome Fellowship, but there was one thing missing, which is that he didn't have a project. And so they kind of brought me along to kind of give a few ideas, and what came out of that was that he would come into the laboratory. So along he came. I think he was rather surprised when he got to the laboratory, because I think he had in mind one with patients and catheters. And in fact, what he got was pipettes. But he did outstandingly well. He, as a clinical cardiologist, he took to the lab like a duck to water, and he came out with some brilliant work, which has started up his interest in molecular imaging. And of course, since then, his research has gone from strength to strength, as indeed has your career, Ramzi. And I'm just going to highlight just a few things that I think we've all learnt in his amazing lecture. We've learnt about his amazing ability as a clinician to embrace molecular research. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. And so we've heard about molecular imaging, we've heard about biomarker discovery, and now we're going to hear in due course about potentially vaccination to prevent heart attacks. That's quite a big deal. Then we've also heard about his astonishing diplomatic skills. And I mean, one could go on and on about that, but I think what I would give as an example is his ability to pull together all those scientists and cardiologists in the vulnerable plaque meeting, which, as he said, he took over. This was already an existing group of friends, I'd say, but these are all senior, very eminent people, and his capacity to herd cats and bring them all together with almost no infighting is absolutely amazing, and the meeting goes from strength to strength. We've also heard about his amazing philanthropic work, and his work in Bethlehem and Basra is absolutely astonishing. So my wife Kathleen and I had the great honor to go out and be present at the opening of the cardiac center. It was a very life-transforming experience, and we got to see around the West Bank and stuff, and it was, as I said, life-changing. And then, of course, all the stuff he's doing recently with the conflict. And then we've also heard about his educational interests, and I'd like to particularly stress this because Ramzi believes in teaching science to clinicians, teaching concepts to clinicians. We're living in a world now where science is often not valued much by clinicians, and indeed junior doctors don't have to know any science to get on in the workforce in the clinical place. But I would contend that actually, if a doctor doesn't understand any science behind his subject, he's not going to be as good as someone who does. He's not going to be able to understand the difficult patients, the complex ones where diseases interact, where drugs interactions and so on. And Ramzi, you're fulfilling that, and this very much is going to be one of your main mantles in the clinical workplace, to make sure that young cardiologists understand the importance of understanding their subject. Well, casting my mind back to Ramzi's PhD days, he started producing papers, and he'd send them to me, and he'd say, Prof, what do you think of this? And, you know, correct it if it needs correcting, kind of thing. And so I'd look at it, and I'd make a few changes. In fact, I made so many changes that Track Change gave up. And I'd send it back to him. I'd say, Ramzi, not bad. Good start. Anyway, as time has gone on, these editorial changes have become less and less necessary. He's now a fluent author and fully capable of commanding his own manuscripts. But I think that I would now say that Ramzi's at a point, as we've heard, where he's made a great start. And thank you for an amazing lecture. I think we all agree this has been absolutely astonishing. And it just remains ready to say, to quote a slight cliche, it's the end of the beginning, and it signifies really a tremendous further career. Imperial is really proud of you, Ramzi, to be in the community that we have, and as is, in fact, the whole of the cardiological world. So I think without more ado, I'm going to thank you all for coming. It's been really an amazing event. And I think that you'll find that there's refreshments outside. Thank you, Ramzi.
We're cutting the questions and going straight to the reception. Yeah. So please go ahead.
No more questions.
Yeah.